Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. Welcome back from lunch, everybody. Nice to be with you today. We're going to talk for about 30 minutes or so on bridging the gap between expectations and reality. Got a phenomenal panel of experienced practitioners here. I'm going to go down the line and let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump into about 4 questions. And hopefully we have some time to take some of your questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to the panelists.
Hey, Chris Arundel. I'm the CEO of Cyber Data Pros. We're based out of Atlanta. We like funky shoes, having fun with CMMC. We're essentially a preparation and advisory firm, so we help clients go from start to finish, package everything up, and sit with A-LIGN for their assessments. Excited to be here and excited to answer some of these questions.
Thank you, Chris.
My name is Mitten. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer here at Remedic. We've been around for about a decade. It's actually our 10th year anniversary this year. I've been working with the company for about 8 years. We help customers comply with any compliance frameworks like CMMC, FedRAMP, SOC 2, ISO 27001, and provide any implementation services.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Dixon, head of delivery for A-LIGN Data, now a Riveron company as of about 2 weeks ago. A-LIGN is a cybersecurity and compliance advisory company, so we help customers implement compliance cyber across the board.
Hi everyone, I'm Morgan Kaplan. I'm the head of public sector at Vanta. We are a GRC tool that helps streamline and automate compliance for folks. We do 40 plus different frameworks, but of course very much helping folks with CMMC and helping the defense industrial base in this space. And my background is more on the policy side, is how I kind of came into national defense and work like that. So I'm really excited to chat with you all.
Great, thank you guys very much. So we're going to do our after lunch exercises. Is everybody ready? The first question, I just need you to raise your hand. That's your exercise, raise your hand. If you are level 1, you have a level 1 CMMC requirement, but you haven't started yet. If that's you, raise your hand. Okay. Level 1, and you're getting ready. You're in the process of self-assessing. Okay, level 1 and you're there, you're done, you already got it done, great. Level 2, you know you're gonna have a requirement, haven't started. Level 2, haven't started. Level 2, getting ready. Level 2, getting ready. Level 2, scheduled to be assessed. Level 2, done, certified, certificate in hand. Great,
Nice.
okay, great.
Good.
So a pretty wide variety of folks, and so again, what we want to do today is really talk about what works. These guys have been through this process a bunch of times. They've helped a bunch of clients navigate the process. So Chris, I want to start with you. When it comes to CMMC, what are some of the major misconceptions that you see, and how do you help clients navigate that?
I think one thing that I see quite a bit is, prospects come to us and say, listen, I have a SOC 2 Type 2 report, and I feel that I'm halfway to 70% ready for CMMC Level 2. Right, which of course is a big misconception. Everybody thinks that one framework is, suitable for the others, right? Another misconception I get quite a bit is, hey, we just decided we're going to delete all of our FCI and CUI, and therefore we don't need any sort of CMMC certification, right? We all know that based upon contracts, based upon the items that you sign, the requirements that are there, you can't just go out and start deleting stuff, especially if it's something that's business critical, right? That's a big need. One other thing that I get quite a bit is there are no physical security requirements in CMMC Level 1 or Level 2. Yes, I use that face all the time when people say that, right? People don't understand, again, things like, the cameras, the badging, the logging, keeping track of all those records. There's a lot that goes into it, right? So a lot of misconceptions out there. I can go on and on about phone calls that I've had and examples, and I'm sure these guys can also do the same thing.
Yeah, why don't we get one from each? Mitten, what are some one big misconception that you see and how you help clients navigate that?
I was on a sales call a couple weeks ago, and one of the clients was like, oh, we don't have to implement the controls, we can just add them in the POEMs. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions around how to use it. First of all, you can't even use it for Level 1. You have to implement all the 17 controls. I mean, they are pretty basic, so you should. And for Level 2 and Level 3, you can use the POEM documents, but it has to be only some of the critical controls. For things like multi-factor authentication, you can't add that to the POEM and still pass your certification. So I see a lot of misconceptions about that. I think people need to understand how to implement the POEMs properly.
Yeah, I think for us, I think Chris mentioned it, but for other compliance frameworks, the scopes generally don't overlap. There's a lot of things, that come in via inbound, via email, that would never be in scope for your SOC 2. So I think just really understanding scoping components that were mentioned in the audit session, I think are extremely important and misunderstood a lot as people are going navigating the process.
I mean, a couple that we see is one, people saying, oh, I'm compliant with 800-171, so I'm good, right? No, that's not the case, and so we do hear that from time to time. And then also sometimes we hear people say, you know, hey, I don't know how to find out what level of CMMC I should have. And, you know, our answer, of course, is, well, you should talk to your contracting officer. You could ask, and people say, oh, you can ask. And that's, I don't know, kind of like a big theme I kind of always push is like, you could be very vocal in this process, and a lot of the answers are out there in the community, and you should seek them out.
Yeah, great points. I want to kind of come back to something Dixon mentioned. I want to give this to Mitten around scoping. You know, they built the pre-assessment into the CMMC assessment process specifically to address scoping and to make sure those scoping requirements are being addressed up front, so there's no false starts. So Mitten, how should clients be thinking about scoping and data flow, and why is understanding data flow such a critical foundation for CMMC?
I mean, you can't implement CMMC without scoping it correctly. It's one of the biggest pieces of implementation. First thing that we have to do when we're working with our customers, because CMMC is a data-driven framework, you need to understand what data you're processing, where it's being stored, and who you're sharing that with. This is also reflected in the different CMMC levels. So for level 1, you usually need to go for that if you're processing federal contract information. For level 2 and 3, it's controlled unclassified data. So before we even start the implementation, doing the gap assessment, that's like jumping 5 steps ahead. We start with a data mapping analysis when we're working with our customers. That's the first thing that we do. Understand where all their vendors are, where they're sharing that data with, and just simply drawing a system boundary. That boundary becomes the scope of your CMMC assessments. And then you can start conducting a gap assessment and then implementing the remaining NIST 800 and 171 controls. I see a lot of customers thinking that every single one of their software vendors, contractors, they have to comply with CMMC, and that's not the case. It all depends on what is in that system boundary and where that data is. Anything outside of that, you don't have to include it.
Yeah. Dixon, anything to add to the scoping question?
No, I mean, I think just as an example, like we're dealing right now with a manufacturer. They produce a part for a prime, and you know, like the part number and the drawing is considered CUI. They had an ERP system that was cloud-based. The system was not FedRAMP equivalent, and so you know they're having to go through this process of actually bringing that system in-house, deploying it on-prem. So again, I think just like really making sure that you understand the flow of all that data. What is the data? Where does it land within all of your systems? And then you go through to the kind of the proper architecture to make sure that you can be compliant like long term. So that's kind of a nuance for us, I guess, because we generally deal with like cloud service providers. But I think as we get into these like more kind of like old school like businesses, like where that data flows is going to look very different from some of like the modern technology that we're largely used to assessing.
Yep. Morgan, how about with Vanta? Do you guys do scoping? Is that part of your tool, or is that something you do as you're getting folks onboarded into your tool?
Yeah, we work a lot with our partners on helping with that. So part of why we're here with you all, working with MSPs and advisors to help use the tool for scoping is very much part of our work.
Awesome. Chris, any final thoughts on scoping?
I think relying on IT can also just be sort of like the crutch, right? Like, hey, IT has said X, Y, and Z, and then once you get in there and you start reviewing and assessing, it's like, what about this? Did anybody tell you that you had a server sitting in that room? By the way, did you know this? And it's like, well, no, I didn't know that because I was relying on IT or my MSP to provide me all the information. And therefore, when you're drawing the data diagram, it's like, well, I'm doing it based upon information I've been given, right? I don't know your business. I haven't been working there for 10 years. So how do you best partner up with all the different pieces to make sure that you do have the right proper data flow?
Yeah, and I think the partnership component is so important to this because most of the folks that I've worked with in this space really can't go it alone. They really need help with an experienced partner to kind of get them through the process. In that regard, as we talk about readiness and we talk about getting ready, obviously the first hurdle that a lot of companies are going to have to overcome is the self-assessment hurdle, is either a level 1 or a level 2 self-assessment. So Morgan, I want to give this one to you. When it comes to the scoring and the readiness and the timing of how long does this take, I need to have this in a week, I need to have this in 6 months, what do you advise your clients? What's that journey look like? Is it relatively the same amount of time? Can it vary, end to end?
Yeah. It can certainly vary end to end. I mean, right, it depends on where you are in the process. Also, where you are in terms of your contract, right? Is this something you currently already have and that you're being asked that you need to comply today in order to meet it? Or is this something that you're starting to work with to get a DoD contract and you have time to kind of get there? I'd say with timing, the long pole in the tent, at least the way we talk about it with customers, is really looking at the need for audit, right? Like, you should be working with your audit partner as soon as possible and identifying them. There are so few, frankly, C3PAOs compared to how many companies actually need to get a CMMC certification that we're finding that people are having to schedule these things quite far out. So we'd say, like, start very early on in the process there. And then, of course, working with your advisory partners, your assessors, to identify a tool like a GRC tool that can help you automate as much of the process as possible and to streamline it to kind of bring that timeline of readiness down. And then, of course, the final component that's kind of there is, I think oftentimes when we talk about the readiness, we forget all the other steps along the way, which is, okay, so now you get readiness, you get your audit, then maybe you get certified. But there's obviously, of course, the continued assessments down the road and also continuous monitoring. And so keeping in mind how the work you're going to do on the front end is going to help you be efficient on the back end is really important.
Yeah. Chris, any thoughts on that?
Again, just kind of going back to what I said before, right? Like, everybody in here has a day job. And so how do you actually find the time to scope out other areas that you need to get ready for level 1 or level 2? And so I think, what we typically do is we'll bring in A-LIGN early and we'll kind of work with them to say, hey, let's think about timing. Let's think about our steps, project manage everything out. Right, but again, at the same time, I think somebody's also mentioned it. All of us have done this with A-LIGN, but if we have questions or there's a unique circumstance, we can go talk to them, right? And we can get some guidance. That way, we can keep the project moving, and we don't, impact the timeline. And so I think it's important that we've got that open line of communication. We can help you and work with you, but I also think too, get us in there early, right? Because we need to get everything advised and prepared to sit with A-LIGN or C3PAO. So I think it's important from that perspective to get it done early.
Minton, how about any readiness? Does it take around the same amount of time, a short end, a long end?
I would say automation plays a really huge role. I mean, we partner with Vanta with other GRC monitoring solutions, and before we started using those tools, it would be about like gathering hundreds, if not thousands, of screenshots, documents, spreadsheets, and honestly, that's a full-time job. So having a GRC monitoring solution like that, it really saves you time, and it also saves you the money that you would spend on that full-time personnel. And their entire job is just gathering evidence, because especially working with CMMC, since it's a continued monitoring process, it is something you have to gather on a regular basis.
Yeah, excellent point. And it makes the assessment go a lot smoother when everything's already collected.
Yeah.
Dixon, any final thoughts on readiness and how long it takes, what it takes?
No, I think these guys have hit it. I mean, maybe the only other thing to add is just like having that solid system of record. I mean, God forbid if it be a SharePoint site, but you could do that. But I think that's where the tooling becomes really critical. I think the documentation development, software that's out there, like Paramify, also highly accelerates. Can really accelerate your journey. And so having that toolkit that's going to make you more successful and make sure that you're hitting all the points that are necessary to get compliant.
Yeah, excellent point. I think the backwards planning piece is so important to understand when you're trying to be done, and then back that up. You've got lead time and contract time and readiness time, and you've really got to kind of start at the end and then kind of work your way back, and I think you'll get a realistic timeline. And it's probably going to be a little bit longer than what you think. I mean, and I don't know, and I don't think if you're in that mode of getting ready, you're going to feel ready. I don't think I've talked to a single client that has said, oh yeah, we're ready to go. It's all like, I think we're ready, but we're going to find out. So Dixon, I want to give this one to you. What about engaging a C3PAO? Like, how do you advise your readiness clients in terms of when is the right timing to engage a C3PAO? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think Morgan mentioned it, but I think as early as possible. I think, we do a lot of smaller organizations, budget conscious, obviously, and I think everyone's worried about engaging too early because they have to spend money. I think Matt mentioned it earlier. A lot of times, the invoicing for those jobs actually happens when the primary audit actually takes place. So I don't think it's necessary to wait if that is your big concern. So I think the earlier you partner with an audit firm, the better, because you can ask questions. Like, they want a smooth assessment. They don't want to come in and things not be ready. So using them as a resource alongside like all of the other partners that you have, I think is really critical for success. And if you're waiting until the last minute, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, good point.
I mean, yeah, one thing I'd add there too. I mean, if it's not clear from the fact that we're even doing this panel, like we're all kind of like one community and ecosystem. We all talk with each other. We all work with each other, and we're all used to finding the right combination, right, of auditor, tool, assessor, whatever you guys need. And it's like it's completely professional, right? We're always happy to talk about the different options and put the right plan together depending on who you're working in there. So again, it's kind of be vocal.
Yeah, no one benefits from you being unsuccessful,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's like we all want you to be successful, and having all those partners like really matters.
Yeah, that's a very key point. Chris, any thoughts on scheduling C3POs?
I think like you mentioned, right? It's always going to take longer than you think, but I think it's about having realistic expectations, and as you mentioned, backing into it, right? I'm working with a client now that said, hey, listen, we need to be fully certified level 2 within 6 months, but we haven't started, right? We haven't even approached the C3PAO. And by the way, what is a C3PAO, right? And is A-LIGN the best one to go with? Should we go with these other ones, right? And so it's being that advisor. We're kind of the ones that are working with you to say, based upon your environment, your budget, your needs, your timeline, what makes sense? And so, like you said, backing into it is very important.
Yeah. Matt, any final thoughts on scheduling C3PAOs?
I mean, for our services, it takes roughly around, I want to say, 6 to 12 months to fully implement NIST 800-171 controls. So when you're working with auditors, they also have to remain impartial, unbiased. I mean, we are at an A-LIGN event, so I know everyone knows about that. I think it is important to conduct your internal gap assessments and also do the implementation work, because auditors cannot provide a lot of implementation guidance when you're working through the engagements. Yeah, I think it is important to sign with them as early as possible, at least just to get some of the questions out of the way about the process.
Yeah.
Get it reserved.
Yeah, get it reserved. And I think from the assessment side, it's obvious when we work with a partner, when we're dealing with clients that have worked with our partners, because they do come ready. There is a difference between that and somebody that's kind of gone it alone, if you will, and tried to navigate it themselves. So I'd like to take maybe a question or two from the audience and just kind of see what's on your mind. If that's kind of provoked any thoughts. There's a question here.
You mentioned moving from a cloud service back to on-prem. So I have a more specific question with that. We know if you are on-prem, and we'll use an easy one, we'll say Splunk. If you move that to the cloud, that would trigger a reassessment. If you are on the cloud with Splunk, if you move back to on-prem, does that also trigger a reassessment?
Yeah, I mean, any change is going to potentially drive a reassessment. So, that's just something you need to evaluate. Now, there is some ambiguity around what is a change, what is a significant change. Yeah, and so that's where it's good to have a relationship with your readiness partner that can say, hey, this is what we're planning. Does this trigger, would this trigger a recert versus is this, a standard change or something that would fall within the normal bounds of a system change?
The most common answer with that seems to be
It depends.
successor,
Yeah.
which is kind of frustrating.
Yeah, and we're working through that. I mean, we don't want the answer to be it depends. We want it to be black and white, but unfortunately, we got to work the gray out of the model. That's just where we are.
Okay, PCCA, but that's not necessarily true that just because you take Splunk from on-prem to cloud, especially if you're using GovCloud.
Yeah.
I think that's not. I would check with them. I've talked to Lockheed. I've talked to Boeing. I've talked to the big guys. Most people, the only thing that's black and white that will require a reassessment is if you M&A and you got to get a new cage code.
That definitely will.
If you're going to add a new cage code, they're not going to, even if you're like, dude, they're still in my end, I'm, absorbing them in the board. So that's definitely, like you say, build a relationship, but that's not something that they're going in like, oh, this is, you're going to have to no one's going to make it 3 years.
Right.
He's kind of going to put, because 3 years is the ATO standard for the DoD, for those that, it's not like this was a new idea. You should, yeah, I would not go in trying to say like, I want to do a reassessment just because you want to try to have good documentation
Did you have an ad?
Other than a cage code change, is something that mandatorily triggers a reassessment?
I would talk to your assessment firm to find that out. I mean, the rule says significant change. I think that's up to interpretation. So you just need to get.
Mine's our assessment firm. What would trigger a reassessment?
It depends. I mean, I'm happy to talk with you offline. It really just depends on what the change is, what that threshold of that change is.
Say we add a facility.
A facility, I would say no. No. Now, if you're not changing the scope, now that does increase the scope a little bit on the facility side, but I would say that wouldn't trigger a reassessment. Anybody else have any questions? Please.
How does a GRC integrate with A-LIGN for audit purposes?
How does it integrate?
Yeah, does it integrate? Like if we were to go with Vanta, can A-LIGN conduct their audit out of the GRC?
We have started doing that, yes. Yes, we work with,
Consider in scope at that point?
the GRC should be in scope.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's what.
We'd be classified as an SPA probably.
Okay.
In which case we'd have to provide our kind of documentation, be part of the process to show that for the controls we're responsible for that we're compliant. But yeah.
Yeah, there was some confusion. We've heard from other GRCs, the inability to conduct the audit straight from the GRC, because obviously that would be the selling point for a lot of the GRCs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
It also depends on your auditor. Like if you select an auditor that doesn't work with Vanta, obviously they're not going to be able to audit it because they don't trust Vanta. So you do need to find a partner that trusts those GRC monitoring solutions in order to work with them.
Who we're looking at is sitting up there right now. So.
Yeah.
Happy to chat.
We already got a contract.
Oh, cool.
okay, let's kind of wrap it up and end with the one thing that you would impart if your one piece of advice to organizations that are trying to navigate the process. What is that one game-changing thing that they can do to help them kind of accelerate and be successful? Chris, I'll start with you. We'll go down the line.
I would say to prioritize the tasks surrounding either a level 1 or level 2 assessment and project plan those out and understand that like where the gaps are, make sure you've got the training completed, make sure that you've project planned everything out to make sure that you meet timelines. Because I often work with clients that they don't want to do a project timeline. They don't want to do a project plan. They're just like, you go and do whatever you need to do and come back to me and tell me when you need something, right? Which is a really bad partnership because everybody's in it together. And I think having a partnership with IT, with operations, with legal, with your MSP can help things move along a lot faster.
Mitten, one thing.
I would say one of the best things that can probably help you is, and I know I talked a lot about scoping, but I think if you can reduce your scope, that can really help expedite the audit process and it can make a smoother experience because you are probably using hundreds, if not thousands, of software vendors. There are ways that you can consolidate them. There are ways that you can remove some of them from the scope by removing where controlled unclassified information is being transferred to. And I think that can really help simplify things and you can, at the end of it, save some money on time as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just reiterate that. I mean, I think nailing your scope is critical. Read the scoping guide, work with your partners to understand the scope, document the data flow, and you're going to be better off than 90% of the people we talk to.
Yeah, I mean, mine's very high in the sky, but seriously, just stay vocal if you have questions. Like, ask people. Like, you don't need to sign a contract with somebody to get good answers. People are happy to have the conversation, and just if something seems like, hey, it's a weird case, just ask around about it and just stay vocal.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I think that's our time. I really want to thank you for your time. I want to thank the panelists for their time and for their insights. Thank you very much. I think we've got another session coming up.